Welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, we're going to have a lot of fun today. Here's what we're going to do. We will start out with a trip to Nosara Paradise over in Costa Rica and get a quick report from Craig Sutton. Man, I can't hear enough from him lately. They are stacking up double-digit sailfish days, catching blue marlin. I want to hear about it. Then we're coming to Florida, and we're going to start up in the northeast section, check in with Captain David Voorhees. Man, has it been cold in northeast Florida. Find out what that's done to the fish, work our way down the coast, through the Keys, and up the west coast to find out what areas are red hot for the fishermen in a cold, cold winter. And then we're going to have a special guest, Captain Tim Altman. They call him the mayor of Whoville. He's a big Wahoo fisherman. He recently sat in on a webinar concerning dolphin and Wahoo and what the preferred recommendations are by the South Atlantic Council. I want to hear what's going on with that. So sit back, grab a cold drink, and take a listen. Hey, we really appreciate you being here tonight. Remember, this and every podcast we do is brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people back to nature. By DOA Lures, the unfair advantage. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat, spay, and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. All right, our landing gear's down. We've taxied to a stop, and guess who's standing there with a cold pina colada for me? None other than Captain Craig Sutton. Captain Sutton, I am glad to be in Nosara.
Man, I tell you what, Ricky, I just got back 3 weeks ago. I wish I was down there right now.
Woo.
The big Mahi are everywhere. We've had 3 days in a row. We caught 3 of them. We caught 2 earlier in the week, last week, and these are monster fish. I mean, just look at the pictures. You tell me. But we're putting them on Boca Grip, and several of these fish are bottoming out 50-pound Boca Grip.
Yeah, I believe that, Craig. I don't think I've seen a picture on your site in the last few weeks that have shown a Mahi under 40 pounds. I mean, obviously there's been some, but of the big fish, it looks to me like every one of those fish is 40 pounds or better.
Every one of them. And, they're true shut-up fish. They're just kind of fish you just look at and you go, holy moly, man.
Is there any pattern? Is there any pattern to what they're eating, or what are they catching them on?
They're catching them on ballyhoo. They're coming up on the teasers, and we're catching them on conventional stuff. There's nothing magical to them. They're ravenous. They just, they come up, and those bad boys are eating. They're going to eat.
Craig, I love them. I love them so much, and I know you've experienced the same thing I have. You're dragging next to a piece of debris or down a rip or something, and all of a sudden you see that forehead come shooting out and start racing toward your bait. But you better open the fish box and get the gaff ready, because he ain't going to quit till he's in the boat.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I wish I had a nickel for every one big one I lost right at the gaff shot. But, I was down there a few weeks ago, and we caught a couple small ones, but I was looking for that big one. I want to bust my 48-pound personal record. It looks like it's happening down there, but I'm thinking that it's going to get better and better.
Man, I hope so.
Me too.
Well, let's see. I took Frank Wilhelm from Yamaha last year. We put him on his first Pacific sailfish. We put him on his first blue marlin. Yeah, a 45-pound dolphin would fit in that group just fine. Thank you.
Absolutely. And, we're still catching big numbers of sails, Ricky.
Yep.
Big numbers. And we caught some nice yellowfin last week. No monsters, but there was a couple of them right there at that 30 pounds, which is a decent fish. But, you add that to a couple big Dorado and then 5 or 6 sailfish on a day of fishing, that's a pretty good day.
That's a pretty good day, Cap. That's a pretty good day. Tell people how they can get a hold of you if they want to go to Nosara.
They can call me at 904-591-2161.
Or they can visit fishingnosara.com. Hey, Craigie, we appreciate it as always. Please tell me we can check in with you next week.
Absolutely.
You got it. Thank you, buddy. All right, our thanks to Craig Sutton for a great trip to Nosara. Let me put my sweatshirt back on. Let me put my heavy jacket back on. It's time to stop in Northeast Florida and talk with our buddy, Captain David Voorhees. David, how are you?
Hey, Ricky, I'm ready to get on the plane and head to Nosara myself. Let's do it, man. Let's get out of this stuff.
I'm going to tell you, I debated, our gas fireplace ran out of gas the other day, and I debated, is it going to be worth it to refill that thing? You know, we're probably not going to have any more cold. I was incorrect.
Yeah, one more, and I tell you, things were just really starting to get good, Ricky. We had a phenomenal week last week. We caught lots of fish. The fish were turned on. Water temperature was creeping back up into the mid-70s, about 73, 74 degrees. And then, boom, all of a sudden we get another cold snap. I was out today, Rick, and the water temperature is back down to 57.
Oh, that's too cold for the middle of March, Cap. That's too cold for the middle of March.
And it was tough. And my last two trips, we really had to work hard getting what fish we did get. It was just been tough when the fish get cold like this. Last week I was catching them at the mouth of the creeks. The creeks were emptying out. They were up on some of these flats. So the fish were really starting to get active. Today, I didn't see a single push up on the flat, and the water didn't look that bad. I know I've been talking about dirty water. It really, really looked pretty good today. I was surprised, but never saw a single fish. So we fished the deep water. We picked up a few trout here and there and a couple of small reds, but nothing to write home to mom about. I can tell you that much. It was really windy. It was tough, and when you're fishing, doing these deep drops and this deep water jigging, it's so important that you feel this bite. And the bite, Rick, has just been soft. I mean, just you barely feel it. So any wind that's blowing against your line is going to just affect the ability of the angler to feel that bite. And that seems to be our problem. It's going to be tough, but you know what? It's going to warm back up, and when it does, these fish are going to fire off. I'm going to stick with my beta choice have been mud minnows, but I'm still bringing a few shrimp with me here and there.
Yeah. There's a few shrimp, and sheepshead come to mind right off top of my head that will eat a shrimp much faster than he will a mud minnow, won't he?
Exactly.
Yeah, I was pleased with the results actually yesterday of the El Cheapo. It went better than I thought. At 12.77 won the kayak division, and I believe an 11.76 or something won the general. So there were some big fish caught, and they all, of course, had to be caught inshore because there wasn't anybody going out in that ocean. I can tell you.
No, nobody was going offshore.
I am going to be the happiest boy around when I'm up in my little tower in May, dragging along a calm Gulf Stream, not really caring if I'm getting a bite or not, just being glad to be there.
Yeah, I understand that, Rick. Hopefully we can get out and do some sail fishing.
You got it. Thank you, David. As always, we appreciate it. Please tell me we can check in with you next week.
Absolutely, and I'm hoping I have a better report.
Things are going to get better.
Every day this week. Every day this week I'm fishing.
All right, let me know how it goes. Thank you, David.
All right, Rick, we'll see you. Tight line.
Our thanks to David Voorhees for a great Northeast Florida report. Now, let's swing on down to the East Central region, where our man Jim Ross just got out of the dentist chair. Jimmy, how you doing?
Boy, I wish I could say I was doing fine, but my wallet took a beating.
Those doggone dentists make a pretty good living, don't they?
I went to the wrong line of work.
Look back over the last 30 years of your life and replace every redfish you've ever seen with somebody's open mouth full of cavities who hadn't brushed their teeth in a month. Now did you pick the wrong occupation?
Well, at the rate per cavity, I'm gonna have to think about that for a minute.
Okay. I give up. I'm not going to sway you. Give me a fishing report, my boy.
It has, Rick, that full moon did a couple of things for it. It got the black drum spawning. It got the sheephead spawning here in the Central East region. It got the triple tail spawning. It actually got the snook grouped up. if you can believe that. We've got pods and of snook here and there that are pretty good sized pods. I marked the school the other day that probably had 200 fish in it, and they're eating shrimp, they're eating croakers, they're eating pilchards. They're not being super picky about what it is they want to eat. They are, however, being picky about when they want to eat. And those majors and minors during the day are still very, very critical right now. So anglers trying to get out to decide, when do I need to go? If you've got the opportunity to go during a major period, I highly recommend it.
So the major feeds are based on the moon, and the major feeds are when the moon is overhead. Is that correct? Or directly beneath us?
Typically overhead or underfoot.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it has been like clockwork a couple of days after the full moon. Now, we've had a cold front that's obviously blown through. The whole state's gotten it. And somewhere along the line, that water is going to clean up. And when it does, I'm really, really looking forward to trying to chase some cobia. Our water temperature is still cold enough that the cobia really haven't showed up here yet in good numbers. And unless you've heard something different, I haven't heard that anybody's really gotten on the cobia real good so far, with the exception of the guys that were down in the southern part of the state.
Well, I've got up to the second knowledge on this. I hate to be the one to bring you this news, but you know how those fish have kind of come to the Cape for the last few years and just got stuck there, and you guys got to catch plenty. Guess what? This year, they're going to come through the Cape in a 24-hour period while it's blowing northeast 30, and they're going to come to Mayport, and they're going to all build condos and stay here. So take that, all right? Just take that, Jim Ross.
Well, you know what? As long as that's where they're at, and I know that I can trust you for that information, I've got a boat on a trailer. I could be there.
I ain't saying a word, okay? Let me give you a clue. If we're doing a podcast and I say, hold on a minute, I got to run over to the grill, or I'm chewing while we're talking, you know the cobia are here.
Yeah, most definitely.
All right, Jimmy, we appreciate it. Thanks so much. Please tell me we can talk to you next week.
I look forward to it, Rick, and you guys and gals out there have a fantastic week.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you so much. Take care. Our thanks to Jim Ross for a great East Central report. Now we're going to hop on down to Miami and check in with the mayor of South Beach himself, Captain Alan Sherman. How are you, my boy?
I'm doing just fine, Rick. South Beach is hopping.
Hopping?
A lot of people down there right now, yeah,
Whoosh.
for sure.
Sun is 53 degrees up here in Jacksonville.
Well, nothing like that is happening here. It got a little chilly, like maybe upper 50s, but now it's already in the 70s and climbing. But the one thing we have is a lot of wind, and you probably have that going on up there as well. And that's affecting our fishing. So I'm going to tell you about what was before the wind started, and hopefully by the weekend the winds will drop off, and we'll see some good fishing happen again. But right now, the forecast is for 15 to 30 mile an hour northeast to east winds.
Yikes!
And that's going to make the seas, pretty high, 7 to 10 feet's the forecast. A few of the guys did venture out in this stuff, but most of the guys stayed at the dock. But the guys that did get out in the past few days, before the weather got bad, the sail fishing was good. More sailfish than we've seen in months showed up, and the guys were catching them anywhere from, I'd say 80 feet out to about 240, 260 feet of water. There's been a few dolphin around. There hasn't been a lot of them around in the past few weeks, but now we have a pretty good east wind, and that's going to start pushing them in a little closer, start pushing in some floating debris. And that's what they're finding the dolphin under, is mostly floating debris. So if you're lucky enough to bump into something while you're out there, catch a few dolphin. If they stop biting, troll something deep underneath that floating debris. There's been some wahoo sitting maybe 30, 40 feet below the surface under this stuff. Large drone spoons, flashy artificial lures, and some natural baits. So, sometimes get those wahoo to rush up and grab your baits. Coming in a little closer, the the beach fishing. We might see some pompano with the dirty water, but the water had been really clear before the winds blew, and the pompano don't like that, but they do like that cloudy water. So it could be something happening there as far as the pompano go. The inlet fishing was really good for snook and tarpon, but I got to say it's going to be a little dangerous to fish that stuff on an outgoing tide until the winds die down. But once they do, you might target the snook and tarpon in the ocean inlet with large live shrimp and live pinfish. In the bay, there had been a really good bonefish bite, plus some really nice snook on the western shorelines around the mangroves and on the shallow flats. But once again, the wind is going to be the strongest on that side of the bay until it calms down. We're already seeing schools of mullet migrating into our area and then further north, and hopefully the predators won't be far behind them. The mackerel, the bluefish, the big jack crevalles, the big tarpon, the snook that feed on those things. And then the only other fishery that's probably the easiest fishery is the freshwater canal systems. The peacock bass have just exploded. Even with this cold weather that we had just over the weekend, I mean, it's cooler weather compared to what you guys experience up north, but the peacock bass are biting like crazy on artificial hard plastics and artificial flies. The fly fishermen are doing really good on them.
Alan, as always, we appreciate it. I sure look forward to talking with you next week.
I look forward to it too, Rick. Take care.
Thanks, Alan. Captain Alan Sherman from the Get 'em Sport Fishing Adventures. All right, everybody loves the Keys, and everybody loves Islamorada. Let's slide on down there and check in with the swordfish master himself, Captain Nick Stancic. All right, good news. We have established communication with the Jedi master of sword fishing, the captain of the Broad-Minded himself, Nick Stancic. Nick, how are you?
I'm hanging in, Rick. How are you?
Good. I want to hear about fishing in Islamorada because it's 53 degrees up here and I don't like it.
Well, I'm not going to get out much the next few days, but I did get out a couple trips last week.
How was it?
First day we caught a pair of swordfish.
Ooh.
And we kept one for dinner. We let one go. And then the following day we had a slow morning on the swordfish, but they turned on for us at lunchtime and we caught one, about 120 pounds. And we tagged and released a doubleheader after that. So we got 3 and came home a little early.
How about that? That's outstanding. Now, you don't get a doubleheader of swords. You had them both on at the same time?
Yeah, doubleheaders are tricky, but we've been fishing 2 rods a lot the last 4 or 5 years. And first one we've caught in a while, so always exciting and makes it a little more challenging.
I'm impressed. I am thoroughly impressed. And a 120-pounder for the table. That ain't bad. What else have you heard from down there? Anything else going on?
Yeah, quite a boats have been fishing the reef. There were some nice blackfin showed up last week, which was nice to see because we just hadn't really had that many on the edge of the reef in the wrecks this winter. But there was quite a few days where boats had 5 to 10 big blackfin from 20 to pushing 30 pounds. Right, close to a 28 pounds or whatnot.
That is good blackfins.
Yeah, there was a handful of sailfish around. That big body of sailfish did not make it here. I think it made it to about Miami. But we did not see that. But in the backcountry, there was a good tarpon bite before all this wind. I know my brother caught and released 4 big tarpon one day up to about 100 pounds. And then my buddy, Captain Brandon Storen, he caught 3 tarpon one day. And I know he caught 1 tarpon the next day and lost 2 or 3 as well. So
that's an outstanding report. Anything going on with the bottom fishing or your muttons biting?
There has been some big muttons. Not as many this past week as we saw a couple weeks ago. But Jimmy, and Jordan, they had some days they had 2 or 3, and I had a couple days at 4 or 5, and a couple up to 18 pounds as well. So we have seen a couple big ones, which is always a bonus when they're over 12, 15 pounds is good size for us.
Mm-hmm. That's great fish. Well, Nick, we appreciate that report a ton. It sounds like it's been a great week in Islamorada. Let's get this wind to calm down, and we'll get back after it.
Sounds good. Hopefully it'll calm down. If not, I'm not fishing for a few days.
Our thanks to Captain Nick Stancic from the Broad-Minded out of Bud and Mary's in Islamorada, Florida. All right, we're going to swing around and start up the West Coast. You know what that means. We got to check in with Steve Dahl in 10,000 Islands. Our thanks to Nick Stancic for his great story about a double header of swords, not to mention a 120-pounder they took home. Golly, that sounds like a lot of fun. Now, let's swing over to 10,000 Islands, and we have located none other than Captain Steve Dahl. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today, Rick?
I'm cold, and I had my second COVID shot yesterday, so I feel like I've been beat with a stick. I I got more screws loose than a Home Depot and a hurricane, Steve. I'm telling you.
Well, I hope you feel better. And,
I will.
It's all for the better, I suppose.
I will. Tell me what's going on.
Yeah, we're doing pretty good. I mean, obviously we're fighting the same cold front everybody else is right now. And, leading up to, it's March and parts of February, we had that as well. And, that's kind of par for the course. We're going to kind of have to deal with this until we get some more stable weather. But when you catch it on the front end of, these fronts, that pre-front bite is just fantastic. And that was kind of the case leading up to, this recent cold front. And I think the weather's going to kind of stabilize a little bit, albeit it's still going to be pretty windy. It's going to be pretty good, I think. I really, the nearshore bite, if there's one consistent thing we've had in our region probably throughout all of this volatile weather, it's been the nearshore bite. And everything's pretty much in play right now. We're starting from the bottom up. I mean, it's big sheep's head on the bottom, 3 different types of snapper. There's red and gag grouper fairly close to shore, which is pretty wild. And then you're starting to mix in, there's, Spanish mackerel. There's tons of bycatch of, Jack Revels and blue runners. And, it's just an action oriented, style of trip. And then on the top layer, we've got just hordes and hordes of kingfish, and which is great. I mean, they're just wolf pack fish that are just cruising, the top third of the water column. And, as gin clears the water's been, you can see them. So it's pretty wild.
Really?
So it's they're almost laid up, Rick. Like they're almost just kind of just wallowing on the surface, or a couple feet down. They're just laid up, and you might see anywhere from 6 to 20 of them, and they just gingerly show up. You pitch a bait. Sometimes they're interested, sometimes they're not. And it's a lot of fun to actually be able to sight fish them, which is, really cool. So
I can't say as I guess maybe Robert Trossett down in the Keys. I know sometimes sight fishes kingfish, but there's not very many times you hear that. That's fantastic that you can do that down there now.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's something that we normally don't get, but these fish are just really comfortable, and I think it's just a plethora of bait, and they don't have to go very far, and they're literally just they're not chasing anything that we're bringing up either. It's just they're just waiting for something to swim by that's easy, because they're not moving all that fast. It's a real weird dynamic.
Let me ask you a question, okay?
Yep.
Barracuda, we will see laying absolutely motionless in the water. Just totally. I've never seen a kingfish do that. I've seen them very slowly cruise along, but are you seeing fish holding motionless, or are you seeing them swimming?
Yeah, they're gingerly swimming.
Okay.
And once they even a raised rod tip, as clear as the water's been, is something enough to spook them. So then they'll dart off. But, if we're on a drift and drifting through an area, it's kind of easy to intercept them. That's exactly my first thought, though, Rick. I thought they were barracudas, because I've seen that dynamic too. Not the case. And we really don't get mature barracudas inshore, nearshore, down by us like the Keys does. So we kind of easily rule that out, that we just don't get those big ones. And these are mature kings, 36 to probably 45-inch fish. They're big fish. But it's been pretty fun.
That's cool. That's way cool. That's a great report. Yeah. I think you're the place to be this week. Everybody else is crying the blues with the wind and the cold. And I think I mentioned it's 53 at my house. You can have this winter. I'm done with it already. Thank you, Steve.
I'm with you there. All right, you be well.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you next week. We appreciate it. Captain Steve Dahl from 10,000 Islands. Now, let's move up the coast a little bit on the left side and talk with Captain Greg Stamper. Greg's report will be brought to you this week, each and every week, as a matter of fact, by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people back to nature. By DOA Lures, the unfair advantage. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flats bay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Let's find out what Captain Greg Stamper is up to.
All right, so we'll start off with the back base. We have had some wind. Obviously, we had a decent cold front come through. Hopefully, it is the last of what we're going to see. But, there's a possibility of getting a few more. The back bay bite, though, honestly, Rick, for the snook and the redfish and quite a few trout has been pretty good. Now, the other really cool part, because I'm fresh off the water, I'm actually coming home as we speak, is a lot of big pompano showed up today. So
cool.
These fish must be moving from the south coming up. We've had a lot of northeast and east winds, so there is clean water very close to our passes. And if you're in those areas, you can almost see it, Rick. You know how it is. It's a big line where one side's dirty, one side's clean. Those pompano are just fired up and they're going full speed. We caught 18 today. The biggest one was only 3 pounds, but we caught them, and that's very, very cool. Now the redfish bite continues to be good, but it's all on cut bait so far because the water just hasn't had a chance to clean up. The guys that were in offshore this week did very well. The 2 days they were able to get out. Captain Sam Canona, he did very well on red grouper. Yeah, they got their limit in about an hour, and they said, well, let's just drop some shrimp down and see what's going on. And guess what he caught? An 80-pound cobia.
Oh, my goodness, that's a big one. That is a big one.
Yeah. Overall, we're getting ready to get warm, so things are going to be really good. I'm pretty sure that in another week or two, we're going to be talking way more about spring, tarpon, permit, etc.
I'm ready, buddy. Thank you, Greg. As always, we'll talk with you next week.
All right, tight lines, Rick.
Thank you, buddy. Hey, guys, the year was 1953. As a matter of fact, that is the year I was born, when one of the true pioneers of big game fishing hung it up. It was none other than Ernest Hemingway himself, and here's what he said. I just don't want to do it anymore. The tackle has become so sophisticated that the fish don't have a chance. Can you imagine walking Ernest Hemingway himself through the aisles of one of the Strike Zone fishing stores and showing him the latest and greatest from Shimano? Can you imagine handing him a Saragusa spinner that weighed less than his bait and could put more torque on a rampaging tuna than the giant old reels of his day? No, Cap, I'm afraid you left us way too early. The fights with great fish still go on today, and we still sometimes get beat. But if I were a sea monster of your day, I think I'd rather do battle with you than face the tools that Shimano has stocked in the Strike Zone fishing stores some 68 years later. Now we're going to come on up into the Big Bend and go straight to a frozen William Toney. William, you and I are on the same latitude, Bubba. I don't like this.
I don't like it at all. Got off the water today. We were at 39 degrees this morning here in Homosassa with a 20-knot northeast wind, and it blew the Gulf dry as it's been all winter long. It just won't give up, Rick.
I know. I decided a week ago that my wife loves her little gas fireplace. And I decided a week or so ago that it really wasn't worth investing in another big 40-gallon tank of propane because, the cold was over and it was, it wouldn't get used again till next winter. William, that was not a good decision on my part.
No, you should have a spare 20-pound backup out there in the garage or something, just in case. It always runs out right when you need it most.
Thank you, Debbie Riles. If I need your advice again, I'll ask you for it. Golly,
gotcha.
Give me some. Let's talk about something. Let's talk about something we know more about. Let's talk a little fishing.
All right, let's look at what's going to happen here on the Big Bend this week. We're looking at a warm-up. The winds are supposed to start laying down tomorrow. So your days like Thursday, Friday, and this weekend look pretty good. We're going to have incoming tides in the morning. So on your incoming tides has been our best redfish and snook bite. So the snook they keep playing peekaboo. They go out to the Gulf. We get a front. They head back up halfway up the creeks and rivers. So I would suspect by the end of this week, we're going to have snook on the outside edges. Look for those nice rocky points, and there'll be redfish mixed in there with them. I've been getting most of my snook on the DOA 5.5-inch glow jerkbait, and the redfish have been eating live shrimp. Now, for trout, they're all over the board, but I tell you what, if you wanted to fish the redfish and snook in the morning and hit some trout in the afternoon, head out to those rocks in about 8 to 10 foot using a Marilure Little John in watermelon red flake with a red jig head, bouncing near those rocks and catching some nice trout. You know, the new rules, we're having to release a lot of oversized fish, but that's no problem with me. And pompanos, Spanish mackerel, sea bass, bluefish, jacks, and a whole plethora of fish out there in that deeper water.
I tell you what, you know, you mentioned DOA, and they are sponsoring our broadcast now. And I don't know if there's been a Florida lure company to have a bigger impact on our inshore fishing than DOA. Do you?
Absolutely. I mean, they're great. The 3-inch shrimp is a must in everyone's tackle box. So, you know, if you don't have any of the DOA 3-inch shrimp, you need to get one in each color, put it in your tackle box, and that should be a go-to. Now, the jerk baits, a while back, nose hooking those things with a loop knot in it is the trout killer and the snook killer here on the Big Bend. And I like the weight of that 5.5-inch jerk bait because it has a high density to it. So any other jerk bait on the market are really good, but not as good as that DOA because you can throw it much further and cast it further because of that weight. And with that extra weight in it, it gives it just a little bit better action.
Do you throw the bait buster at all?
You know, around this area for tarpon, that is one of the top baits. And if you're looking for them around May and June, anywhere around Citrus County, good luck. You better stock up now.
Yeah, I understand. I'm assuming you haven't heard a thing from offshore. It's been awfully, awfully windy.
Yeah, the last day offshore was last good day, I'd say, probably was on Friday. And they're still getting a lot of nice mangrove snappers, getting hogfish out there in that 40-foot range. And I've seen a couple pictures of amberjack out there. So, you know, as soon as this wind lays down, we'll probably get a better offshore report that as of right now, all those boats are in the yard or out the dock or being buffed out or just doing what they do, sitting idle when it's this windy.
Well, I hope over the last 3 months that the most common phrase to cross my lips has been, "I love you, honey." But if it hasn't been, then it would be when this wind lays down. Okay, because
absolutely when this wind lays down. When it does, it looks like, you know, there's so much pollen in the trees and everything, and you know it's just part of Mother Nature getting that stuff spread everywhere. But I just have to say, this has seemed like a long, cold winter than what I remember from last year.
Yeah, Roger's on that, Cap. I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you so much. Please tell me we can talk with you next week, William.
I'll be right down here directing golf cart traffic in old Homosassa.
Sounds good to me, brother. Take care. Captain William Toney, I tell you what, he loves where he lives, and I don't blame him a bit. I've been over there fishing with him, and what a great area. While we're talking about bait busters, before we go on, sneaky little tip, they now make it in an extra heavy, which makes a really cool trolled bait for dolphin and tuna. All right, let's pull off a little further into the Northwest and check in with Captain Kevin Lanier. Kevin, how are you?
Captain Rick are doing just great over here, trying not to go into hibernation because of the cold weather.
Did I hear you were offshore today?
We were out about 18, 20 miles. Yeah, it was, I wore my sweatshirt, my Grundens, and my boots all day. So we had to do that to stay comfortable. But the fish were there. We got some real nice keeper triggers, and we got a few other, you know, Vermilion snapper, porgies, things like that. We got a good mixed bag for a dinner, and we released a bunch of red snapper and got a really nice keeper. Well, if it was a seasoned gag grouper, had to let him go too.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I'm glad to see him. Even if we got to let him go, I am so very glad to see him.
That's true. That's true. We don't have that problem with red snapper over here.
Nowhere.
I tell people every time we go out, you're going to catch a lot of red snapper, but we can't take any home.
Kevin, I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but to me, any future bottom fishing regulations that the South Atlantic Council comes up with, be it raising or lowering triggerfish, be it gag grouper, be it whatever, I think to get the fishermen involved in the process and to support their regulations, which they got to have because we're fishing on the open ocean. They need us to be compliant with their regulations. We'll do it if they fix snapper first, but if they don't fix snapper first, how much are we going to listen to what they have to say?
Well, I have the same vote of confidence in them I have the rest of the people in D.C. Unless we're working towards a goal, then I have a hard time supporting it. If you give me an end goal, a sunset clause, then I'm all with you.
Right. And my good friend Robert Johnson put it well. I've been making deposits in this bank account for the future for a long time. I just realized you never gave me a checkbook. That's
true.
That's kind of how I feel.
That's true.
It's kind of how I feel. Cap, that's a great report. I'm glad to hear your triggerfish are open. I'm assuming you're having no trouble getting your limits when you get on the right spot.
That is true. That is true. I've caught more triggerfish in the last few trips than I care to shake a stick at. Most of them are undersized. I mean, pretty soon we're going to have to be 22 inches to keep a triggerfish.
That's a big triggerfish. Cap, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Hey, Captain Rick, we'll talk to you next week.
Our thanks to Captain Kevin Lanier. Now, that wraps up our action spotters from around the state, and you can tell that everything's been pushed south with the wind. How about all of Pompano down in Greg Stamper's area? That's cool news. Nick Stanzik having a great run on swordfish. Now, we're going to do something a little bit different. I want to talk with a guy that's been involved with the South Atlantic Council with the preferred method that they're showing us, the preferred option for managing Mahi and Wahoo. There's some changes coming, and I want to hear what the webinar about that was all about. So we're going to welcome Captain Tim Altman to our podcast this evening. Here's what they call him, the mayor of Whoville. Mr. Mayor, are you with us?
Oh, stop it, Ricky. I ain't no mayor.
That's what I was told. That's what I was told.
No.
You were recently involved in a webinar about upcoming regulations on Mahi and Wahoo. First off, was this webinar conducted by the South Atlantic Council?
Yes, sir, it was.
All right, and it involved our future management measures. Tell me about the mood. Tell me about what everybody seemed to. How many people were on the webinar, and what did the general mood seem to be?
Well, it was a three-night webinar, and I was on the first and the third night. And the first night there was probably 35 people only on the webinar. And I think that included all 12 members of the management council, right? The fisheries management council. And then the last night, there was probably a large number on the last night of the webinar because it was over 3 different nights. And the last night, I would say there was probably 60 or 70. I think it was like 68 people that night. The mood itself was there was a lot of concern specifically about dolphin in South Florida or Mahi in South Florida, and the lack of numbers, and they were pretty adamant about their concern. And the other sound of concern was from the North Carolina charter fishermen that didn't want any changes to the Wahoo regulations because it would kill their business, and that's where a lot of it was. And there was a lot of it was pretty tense, I would say. That last night was pretty tense.
That's interesting to me. Now, it sounds to me like the preferred option for bag limit on Mahi was to leave it alone, lower the boat limit to 48. But it sounded to me like the council has decided that Mahi are not overfished. Is that the feeling that you got?
That's the feeling I got from reading the motion or the preferred option, which is still 10 per person and 48 per boat, where it goes from 10 per person, no more than 60 per boat. And then they cut the Wahoo limit, which is 2 per person, to 1 per person, making that their preferred option for Wahoo. So they cut the amount of Wahoo, in theory, that you can harvest in half, yet it was a token swipe at Mahi. And I heard nobody complaining that they couldn't catch Wahoo on that webinar. I heard nobody say that about Wahoo.
You mean you heard nobody complaining about going from 2 to 1, or you heard nobody complaining about the number of Wahoo that we've been catching?
There was nobody there to complain about how many Wahoo we've been catching.
Interesting.
The main concern,
the main concern on both nights that I was part of this conversation was for Mahi. It was definitely Mahi.
Yeah, and Tim, I don't understand the problem. I don't pretend to understand the problem, because Don Hammond, who is still doing research, was just at the top of his game, and certainly at the top of Mahi research, taught us there's never been a 5-year-old. They're born by the billions. 1% to 2% survive every year, and that makes up our fishery. But I can't deny the fact that over the last 20 years, I've seen a steady decline. I haven't seen a boom year like he talks about we have when born under the right conditions. It just seems to get tougher every year to catch really good Mahi.
Well, and that's what they were talking about. They were talking about South Florida of catching a 30-pound Mahi was just few and far between when they would get, 10 or 15 a year. And we're talking about charter captains, specifically from Islamorada all the way up to, Stewart, Fort Pierce, and that area. And they were all about it. And they were adamant about it because that's one of their bread and butter fish. That's why people come to go to South Florida to catch Mahi. So that was their main concern. And yet, like I said, I didn't hear anybody complaining about Wahoo. So the complaints that would raise the attention of the council probably came from the science folks.
I see. So right now, the preferred option is 1 Wahoo per person without a boat limit and no change on Mahi, right?
Basically no change. 12 less Mahi on the boat limit. That means you go from 60 to 48.
I'm just not even going to acknowledge that as a change. To me, that's strictly symbolic.
You're exactly right.
If you leave it at 10 per person, you're ignoring the fact that for whatever reason, our Mahi numbers are down, and you're basically saying that either you don't believe that or you don't think it's an area of concern. Well, Tim, I very much appreciate you bringing us up to speed on what the mood of the call was. Now, when is this voted on?
It's in June, Ricky, and you can still address this in a myriad of ways. And we all get, those of us charter captains, we get the email. And one of the things is with our reporting that we started since January 1, when I do a Wahoo trip, either a charter or a recreational trip, I go into the portal. It allows me to report my catch and the days that I'm not fishing. So the way of tracking the amount of fish now, or extrapolating that number, however they want to extrapolate it, they'll have actually really good data to do that from charter captains if they're reporting appropriately.
Good. I hope so. Thank you, Tim. We appreciate you joining us for the podcast this evening, and good luck with your mayor's office of Whoville there.
Oh, thank you, Ricky.
All right, buddy. We'll talk soon. Thank you, Tim. Our Action Spotter podcast this week is brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara, Paradise Fishing, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat span offshore boats? You need to check out youngboats.com. As always, this and all of our Action Spotter podcasts are brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. And by Young Boats. You want the best in flat span offshore hybrid boats? You need to check out youngboats.com.